All right, I am ready. I've got my tier list right here on my laptop. I'm going to rank every drawing app.
Every drawing app ever?
No, not every drawing app ever.
So you're ranking what? 4 apps?
No, it's way more than that. I've got over 20.
So the real title of this video should be ranking every drawing app that Brad's gotten around to using.
As of January 2022, yes.
And all of this is just your opinion.
No, if I say something is great, it is great. It then becomes a fact. Okay, fine. Yes, this is my opinion. I've got a lot of drawing apps here. Some of them are Windows, Mac, desktop type apps. Some of them are mobile apps for iPads or Android tablets. And I also know with this list, it's not comprehensive. It's not every drawing app ever. There are some that I have heard of that I've seen that look really cool. Like there's this painting app called Rebel out there that looks amazing. I've never had the chance to use that, so it didn't make this list. There are also a lot of apps that I have used that I am really familiar with. For example, Adobe Animate. I draw on that all the time. Is that a drawing app? Not really. It's an animation app. So apps like that kind of fall into those kind of categories, those aren't included either. Apologies to Microsoft's whiteboard. So that's what I'm looking at today. So here's our tier list. I've got these different tiers. We've got S, A, B, C, D, and F. And I cropped all the icons of all the drawing apps that I'm going to be talking about today. So let's dive in. First and foremost, we have Adobe Photoshop. Now, Adobe Photoshop is one of my personal favorites. And so to me, it goes into the A tier. This is a top level drawing app, but Photoshop does a lot of things, and it's a lot of things to a lot of people. Photo editing, graphic design, all sorts of stuff. But in studios, whether we're talking about animation, it's used in productions of video games, it is the gold standard for a lot of art production in the world in general, even if it's not specifically just an art app. Also, it's such a standard that a lot of other apps save as a Photoshop format, or they will let you import Photoshop brushes, even though that's kind of hit or miss with some of the fancier brushes. So that's why Photoshop is really high on here. I am tempted to drag it up here to the S tier. Maybe I will. Right now, I think that's, you know what, I'm going to keep it there, and I may change my mind later. Let's see what else we got. All right, next we got Adobe Illustrator. This is a vector drawing app. This is the gold standard for vector drawing apps. It's a very good app. I love it. I use it a lot. Maybe B is too low. Maybe it should go in the A tier for now. This isn't as standard as Photoshop. It's used for a lot of logo designs and layouts and things like that. As an art app, I mean, it's called Illustrator. Since it is my gold standard for, vector drawing apps, we'll keep it in the A tier for now. What do we have next? We have Adobe Fresco. Now, this is Adobe's iPad app. And what Adobe did when they rolled out full Photoshop for the iPad was I think they started breaking up Photoshop's core functionalities into different apps. So Photoshop for the iPad, for example, is all about photography. It's not great for drawing. That's why it's not on this list. Even though you can draw on it, there's brushes and things like that. It's not really what it's for. What Adobe did instead is they broke out what artists want and need into its own separate app. That app is Fresco. Now, if Fresco was just an iPad app, I think I would rank it lower, but it's not. Fresco also works on Windows tablets as well. For example, I love using it on the Surface Pro. And the other thing it does is it has Photoshop's actual brush engine. I mentioned before that many apps allow you to import Photoshop brushes, but oftentimes when you do, those brushes don't fully work. Like if you import a simple inking brush or pencil brush, it'll give you the texture and it'll look the same as it does when you're using Photoshop. However, there's some caveats to that when you get to some more complicated brushes that are doing more interesting things, like say some watercolor brushes or some oil painting brushes, you lose some of that core functionality. And when you import it into other programs, oftentimes those brushes break. Fresco uses those brushes absolutely perfectly. And on top of that, they've added features like vector brushes, and they've added things like live brushes, which are like watercolor brushes. So you can actually paint with watercolor. Oftentimes, when you grab a watercolor brush, you'll paint with watercolor and then you'll pick up your pen and you'll add another stroke, and the page isn't really wet, right? That's just laying watercolor on top of watercolor. Here, there's actually this wet page feel. It's really cool. Not everybody likes the interface as much. I think it's a great drawing app. It deserves at least a B. I think I'm going to keep it there for now because it copied a lot of things from Procreate. which we're going to be talking about in a little bit. So for now, Fresco looks good there.
There's something this guy isn't telling you. He wasn't able to line up a sponsor for this video. So this is the part where he talks about his courses and where you can get them. He's got a few Procreate courses, he's got an Adobe Illustrator, an Affinity designer course. And I don't know how this happened, but they're some of the highest rated drawing courses on Udemy. Probably discount codes for those down below. Anyway, I'll let him continue.
Next up, we have Affinity Photo. Now, Affinity Photo as an app is great, and I love it. And so as an app, I would put it in the A tier. But as a drawing app, I'm going to put it down in D because of the app we're going to be talking about next. So I'm going to group these two together. I'm going to talk about Affinity Photo and Affinity Designer at the same time. So let me drag up Affinity Designer. I'm going to put this right next to Illustrator. And there's a reason why. Illustrator does more things. Illustrator has more features. However, what I love about Affinity Designer is that they don't focus so much on the drawing and photo, because in Designer, there's two different modes. There's a pixel mode and a vector mode. So it's kind of like having the best pieces of Photoshop and the best pieces of Illustrator together in one app. I love that. How I work in Photoshop Illustrator is I will sketch something out in Photoshop, then I'll move it to Illustrator and I'll vector it up. Here, it's all in one app, and all of those things work so seamlessly together, all in one place. It's really nice, and I like the way they've thought that through from the point of view of illustration. Next up, we have Vectornator, and I like Vectornator. I'm gonna give it a C for now. It's a newer app. It's free. Actually, it is free. Maybe I move it to B. I don't know. It's kind of in that in-between spot. Because it's free, I think if you're thinking about getting into vector illustration, this is probably the place to start and get used to the pen tool and stuff. I know they've been updating and adding stuff to it as they go. I think it has potential. I think it could do some really cool things. Right now, it's an iPad app and it's available for the desktop. So, yeah, it's in development. Maybe in the future it'll move up the list. For now, I think C sounds about right. This one is gonna be hard. This is Sketchable, and this is an app. So this is a Windows-only app, and it was designed specifically for Windows touchscreens. And so before Fresco existed, if you wanted to draw on like a Windows 2-in-1 laptop or something that came with a pen, it's something that was touch-enabled, there was nothing like the iPad and Android apps out there. Everything was desktop. And so like the hand gestures were always wonky, and it just like it was hard to hit your touch targets and things like that. Sketchable was one of the first apps out there that kind of came out for Windows and was really good and just focused on, being able to pinch and zoom really smoothly, being able to undo quickly, and its interface is built around that. And because of that, I love it. In fact, I like it enough to move it up to the B category. There you go. Here's another one. This is Leonardo. Oh, this was tough. So Leonardo is another one of those apps where it's available for Windows, and it's another one that I test on Windows touch devices quite a bit. We're going to have a lot of apps in the upper tiers because I have a lot of good drawing apps in here. I feel like not everything could be an A and a B, but I like it. Leonardo is a little bit more conventional compared to Sketchable, where you've kind of got the icons along the side, but at the same time, it's built for touch first. So it's the perfect hybrid of a Windows app for that, like, hey, we have touch for you people with a touch screen, but at the same time, the whole thing is designed to feel more like a desktop-y app. I feel like it really nails that. It does a really good job there. It's lightweight, it's fast, it's reliable. So yeah, it gets to stay in B. Krita. Krita deserves to be above B, that's for sure. So Krita, in my opinion, is the best free drawing app that's available, hands down, period. It is fully featured. It does so many different things. The catch is it's an open source project. It's not super optimized. The 5.0 release came out recently, and it's a lot faster and snappier. It takes several years to kind of get those updates into Krita, though. So while other apps are, kind of iterating quickly, since Krita is, staffed by volunteers and relies on donations, they're not moving as fast. But the number of features that they've poured into Krita are just amazing. You know what? Screw it. Let's move it up to S. I'm going to move it up to S just because it's amazing that something this good is free. Is it perfect? No, neither's Photoshop. But does it deserve that because of the value that it provides? Yeah, I'm gonna go with yes. Let's do that. S tier. Let's do it. Yeah. Next up, we have Gimp. Now, everybody knows that I love Gimp as much as I love a dead turkey on the side of the road. So I'm moving Gimp down to F. I hate Gimp. I hate Gimp. Nobody really talks about Gimp anymore. You know, several years ago, back before there were other like free options out there, open source options out there, people just raved about Gimp because it does everything Photoshop does. It is just laggy and not fun to use and not intuitive and all that stuff. For drawing, there's so much good stuff out there now that I wouldn't bother with Gimp. I'd focus on Krita and some of the other apps that we're going to talk about today. This next one is a tough one. I'm going to give it a C, and this is Autodesk Sketchbook. Actually, it's not Autodesk anymore. Autodesk made Sketchbook for years and years and years, and then recently they sold it. They said they were going to discontinue it, and someone stepped up and said, hey, you know what, it's an amazing app. Don't just shut it down. Let us run with it. Let us buy it off you and keep it alive. And that's what they're doing. Now, I've never been the biggest fan of Sketchbook, even though there are a ton of people who love Sketchbook. So I think to somebody else, Sketchbook would probably be a lot higher on here. To me, it feels like it's kind of in between things right now. They're trying to figure out where they're going. It was free for a while if you signed up and like gave them your email and whatnot. Now it's not. I think it's $20. It's a paid app now in the Microsoft Store. It is available on the iPad, on Android, on Windows, on Macs. So that's really good. But I don't know. I just never really enjoyed drawing in it that much myself. So I'm gonna stick with C. Clip Studio. Okay, so I draw a lot of comics and cartoons, and so I love apps that are designed for that, and that's what Clip Studio is. I was used to drawing in Photoshop, and when I kind of got familiar with Clip Studio, it's like Photoshop, but they got rid of all the cruft that I don't care about and added in things that I do care about, like panel makers and stuff like that, all the stuff that comic people love. It's got that stuff. And the deeper I dive into Clip Studio, the more I love it. It was the first app that I saw that used reference layers, so if you're coloring in your comic artwork, that really nailed that. Like their brushes were really suited towards creating different ink style in comics. I just love Clip Studio. I love it so much we're going to move it up to S. Let's do this. S tier. There's also little things in Clip Studio, like you can animate and you could do all sorts of stuff. Anyway, love Clip Studio. It's available for pretty much everything nowadays. Oh, next we have Procreate. So Procreate is going to go in the D tier. Oh, I'm just kidding. I'm moving it up to S. Here we go. What can I say about Procreate that hasn't been said before? It is my favorite app to draw in. When I just sit down and want to relax and draw, it's Procreate. I think the major reason why is because it was the first iPad app that really nailed the interface. A lot of early iPad apps were replicating desktop apps by putting a bunch of icons everywhere and putting the layers. And this really focused on huge canvas, minimal stuff. Now there's a ton of apps that do that. You know, people are copying and that sort of thing. Also, it was like, okay, what are you doing? You're picking color. Tap and hold to pick a color. Okay, you want to drag color into space? Okay, instead of a paint bucket icon, you just drag the color into the space. 2 fingers to undo, 3 fingers to redo. You swipe down with 3 fingers, it brings up a menu. All of those interface things that we're used to on touch-enabled devices now all started with Procreate, and Procreate has continued to iterate and add features. But as it's added features, those features have never really gotten in the way of what Procreate does well, which is sketching and painting and drawing. So Procreate, love it. It feels more like fun than work, and that's why it's number 1. All right, next up we are going to talk about Heavy Paint. So Heavy Paint is available for the iPad. It's also available for Android. I'm not sure if it's available on the desktop or not. I should look into that. People that like it really like it. It's an interesting app. Because of that, I'm going to keep it in C instead of putting it in D, because they're taking risks and they're taking chances, and it is for a specific thing and for a specific kind of art style. For me, I never really got into it. I feel like the interface element, like the color picker, it's always there up at the top. The tools are always there. It's in a weird place that, kind of covers my canvas a little bit. The brushes are always right there, and they're just letters on the page, so I can never remember it. Not that I've used it enough to really, ingrate it in my mind as to what brush is what. And then when I use the brushes, they're only okay. So it's not for me, but I think it's innovative, and a lot of people who have used it loved it. So C or D, I'll just keep it in C. Art Studio Pro, I'm gonna put that in B. Now, Art Studio Pro is an iPad app. It's a lot like Procreate, but it's kind of a marriage between Procreate and desktop apps. So it has more features visible to you through the interface. A lot of people love it because of that, because it feels more familiar with them because they're coming from the desktop to the iPad. It does a lot of the same things that Procreate does. It's up there. For me, if it's a preference thing, since I'm already used to Procreate and I prefer the minimal interface, that tends to be what I lean into. But this is a very good iPad app. So B seems like a good place to put it. All right, this next one is called My Paint. So this is another open source app. So it's free. You could download it for Windows and Macs and that sort of thing. And some people absolutely love the brushes, and I've tested out some of the brushes, and I don't really quite understand it. So that could be why I'm putting it here. Also, oftentimes when I'm drawing, I get a lot of lag in that app. Even though it seems like a very light app, I think it was designed for Linux and kind of ported over, so it's not super optimized for Windows or a Mac or anything like that. And I think that might be part of the reason why I get the experience I'm getting. But if you're looking for a free app to try that's not very intimidating, which Krita can be pretty intimidating, that might be one to check out. Another one to check out if you're looking for a free app, and this is on Android and iOS. Android and iPad, I should say. This is Ibis Paint X, and man, this could go anywhere. So the idea here is it is a free app. You can pay to kind of unlock the entire thing, or if you want an extra brush, so that it's loaded with all these different ink brushes. And so if you go in there and you want to use some of them and you haven't paid for them, you can watch an ad and it unlocks it for like a day or 18 hours or something like that. So by watching ads, you can unlock different parts of the app. I guess it's cool. Like if you don't have a lot of money and you want to use it, it works pretty well. One thing I love about the app is how well the inking brushes work. They just seem to flow and feel clean and natural and not too wobbly or anything. That's really nice. But for me, personally, I'm like, take my $10 and give me a good app. I don't want to deal with the ads. So for me, that's why I'm going to put it here in the C tier. Medibang Paint. Okay, so this is one. Sometimes it's called Fire Alpaca. They're based on the same open source piece. But Medibang Paint is available for Windows and Macs, probably Linux too, iPad, Android. It's available everywhere. So that's one of the core features that works really well here. To me, it feels like Clip Studio Lite, which isn't a bad thing, but on the iPad or Android, there are a lot of interface elements. And it seems like every time I jump into it, I have to remember how to do stuff. The features that it does have are good, but I always feel like I want just a touch more. Like, oh, I wish it just went a little further here, or they added a little bit more there. So that's why it's there. For a free app, it's wonderful. It's really good, but it's like, I wish the brushes were a little bit better. I wish it did this a little bit better. I wish it did that a little bit better. So that's why I'm just going to kind of keep it in that C tier. Corel Draw. There's Corel Draw and Corel Paint. You know, honestly, I have not used these enough. I'm going to stick this back down here. Honestly, it's been so long since I've used Corel Draw and Corel Paint. It's probably not fair for me to rank it and just stick it in this list. I didn't really care for it that much. This next one is Corel Paint. So I'll stick Corel Draw and Corel Paint. I'll keep them in there. These were competitors with Adobe back when Photoshop and Illustrator were the primary, drawing tools out there. Corel had its own suite of like illustration drawing tools. Mindshare wise, there's still a lot of people out there who love them, but they don't get kind of the press that they used to get. All right, so the next one is Infinite Painter. This is one, I'm going to put it in the B tier. This is one that I could kind of put, I could put it in a couple different places. The reason I'm going to put it there is I don't think it's the best drawing app out there, but it's really good, and it's really good on Android. So if you're drawing on Android and you want kind of something that's just as streamlined as Procreate, Infinite Painter is a really good one to look at. It's also available for the iPad, so if you want to check it out there, it's totally available. You can use it. Artflow. This is another one. It falls into the same category. To me, it's just as good, almost as good as Infinite Painter, but they love Android. They develop for Android. They've been working hard on their Android app and making it better over the years. And for that, I love that. Anybody who's working to make Android a better platform, good job. I love you. Oh, so here's another one. So this is Huion Sketch. If you watch a lot of videos on this channel, I review a lot of tech, and I review Huion's drawing tablets. And what Huion did a few years ago is they started releasing drawing tablets that could interface with Android tablets and Android phones. So instead of connecting to a Windows or Mac computer, you can now connect to an Android phone, boot up an app, and draw on their drawing tablets, and it shows up on your phone screen. It's pretty cool. And I think what Huion ran into is they looked at the drawing apps and they're like, there's just not a lot out there. Like, this is not showcasing our tech well enough for us. So about 2 years ago, Huion said, let's make our own drawing app. And they've been iterating on it ever since. And they've been doing like feature pushes constantly. Every time I get a new Android tablet to review, I open it up, I load up this app, and I'm like, whoa, they added this, they added that. You know what? Let's move this to the A tier. I don't think it deserves to be in the A tier yet, but I think it could be. I think it could be Android's answer to Procreate. I hope they keep, working super hard on it and adding features and doing all that stuff. So, sticking that in the A tier. All right, so my last one here is Inkscape. I've never been a fan of Inkscape. This is an open source vector drawing app. It's not bad. For me, I just never really cared for the interface all that much, and I didn't enjoy using it. There are a lot of people who love Inkscape, and you could do amazing things with Inkscape. For me, I just found it a little too clunky. I think that if I was starting out with vector illustration, Vectornator, which is also a free app, is probably the way to go if you're just learning, or to pick up something like Affinity Designer, which is a lot more complex to learn but can do a lot of things too. So yeah, D tier sounds about right to me. So that is my list. This is the part of the video where I say, what do you guys think? But I have a feeling that a lot of you have been leaving comments as we go, and I'm really curious to read those and see what you guys think. Anyway, the big thing I want to know, and I've got to be leaving something really good out. What are some drawing apps that I should be looking at here in 2022 that you think are awesome that didn't even make my list? That's my question of the day. Let me know down below in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and I'll talk to you in a couple of days.